life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisted. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand the pressure.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Racially Speaking, where we have real and honest conversations about race as it's viewed through the lenses of faith, family, and vocation. As always, I'm your host, David Phipps. Also joining me, Racially Speaking favorite as always, the Alethea Lamberson, up bright and early from her new location in Lakerland.
Yep.
All the way across the country. LA. Leith, how you doing?
I'm good. I got my coffee. So, as long as I got my coffee, I'm good to go and a little more energized this morning than probably most mornings because I get to hang out with you and talk about things that we both love and enjoy. So, doing well.
Absolutely. But be real. Some of that energy has got to be coming from what I'm assuming is your new love for my Lakers being in LA. No?
I have said since LeBron joined the Lakers, I've made it clear I'm not a Lakers fan. I'm a LeBron fan. So therefore, I cheer for the Lakers. And being here, it's definitely like I feel a little more connections. Like, I could just I'm still calling it Staples. I don't care that crypto bought it. They sold it. It's still Staples to me. I can't do it.
Horrible name.
It really is. Crypto.com. Like, no. Staples.
Not even crypto. Crypto.com.
Yeah. Staples is not far from where I live. And so I feel this more like excitement. And I want the Lakers to win. The Lakers are going to beat Memphis. That's what I've said. So, but am I a Lakers fan? I don't want to put that stamp down yet. I want to be clear. I'm a LeBron fan. I wasn't a Lakers fan before LeBron came. So I can't. I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. Let me just say that. So I try not to be a bandwagon fan. Yeah.
That's
so
honest.
I try to be honest about it, but I do want the Lakers to win.
What are the odds you make it to a playoff game?
Literally just thinking about it, like, oh man, they're going to be back home soon. But the way those ticket prices are set up,
right? Shout out to our friends Ashley and Zach. I started texting Zach Bush, who they live in Memphis. And when I saw, one day I was just like, hold on, they really might play Memphis, who are inexplicably in the West. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I could get to a playoff game with LeBron still in a Lakers jersey, which I still haven't seen. So I started planning and scheming. But man, we just had a newborn. It's 8.5 hour drive one way. I can't justify it. Still watching from home, but it was so tempting. I was like, I'm going to get a first round East Coast playoff game, my Lakers and LeBron. So anyway, maybe next year.
Yeah.
We'll see. But LA, when you said we went out to LA, I was like, oh my gosh, what timing?
Right.
What timing?
Pretty nice. I'm not mad about it.
All right. Look, speaking of LeBron, this is a seamless segue. We're here to talk basketball. Leith, we've been, I feel like throwing around the idea of doing, I feel like we always sprinkle in some basketball.
Yeah,
but
have to.
That's what this episode is going to be about. Listeners, don't flip it off if you're not a basketball person. We're, of course, going to dive into some more relevant topics with what we are regularly about here on the podcast. But, we were talking before we hit record, Leith. Hopefully this is, a little more lighthearted, or it will be a little more lighthearted, but
yeah,
just fun, some reprieve with just all the stuff that's currently going on that, Leith, I like what you said before we hit record. If we only talk about the heaviest stuff all the time, we're not going to make it. And so that's just shout out to anyone who is feeling that way currently right now with just all these different things happening that we do talk about here on here routinely. But we wanted to give some time just to have a little bit of fun. We're coming off the heels of March Madness just ending, men's and women's tournament. And we're right in the thick of the beginning of the NBA playoffs. This is how real we are, Leith. Originally we were going to do this tonight, and then saw, oh shoot, the Lakers game is while we would have recorded. So I'm like, hey, can we do this during the day?
Yeah.
playing around with the time difference, and we're making it work. So we're dedicated. Here we are, but we're also dedicated to watching that game tonight.
Yes, we are.
All right, but let's start here, and then we'll kind of end on the NBA and kind of go in the time order, I guess. But like I said, we just came off the end of the NCAA tournaments, ending men's and women's. I'm just going to say this. I am extremely new to watching women's basketball. And I'll be all the way honest and just say, I think I might've gotten spoiled by tuning in this year. Like that tournament was, I feel like it was especially amazing, but I'll say this, like the fundamentals of the women's game from my perspective as a newer viewer, consistently is just like night and day. The type of basketball that's played is just, I don't know. It doesn't touch the men's game doesn't touch it. I just enjoyed the passing, the shooting was nuts. Like I watched the Final Four games. They don't miss. Like it was crazy. Again, I don't know if that's always happening, but I was like, these games are incredible. And of course, you had LSU playing Virginia Tech, who's right down the road from where I'm at. And then of course had, I'm forgetting her name now, Caitlyn Clark, and Iowa playing so many different storylines. So of course I wanted to get your thoughts on what happened surrounding the eventual champions, LSU Tigers, and Angel Reese playing, of course, Iowa, and then who I guess I think was player of the year, right? I'm assuming Caitlyn Clark out of Iowa. Just, oh my gosh, insane. Both teams incredibly talented, both players who I just mentioned incredibly talented. But unfortunately, in the midst of all that, it got overshadowed by some racial narratives, right? I think that's fair to say, right? Leith, I wanted to hear, obviously, your take on what happened. Quick summary. Throughout the Final Four, Caitlyn Clark, the player of the year, unstoppable, like Steph Curry, pulling up from half-court range, had multiple 40-point games, white player for Iowa University. Incredible player, for sure, in my opinion, the best player on the floor at all times. I think even, honestly, in the championship game, even though she didn't play that well statistically, which we can get to. Her and talented team, but I just say objectively less talented than the LSU team who eventually won. And then Angel Reese, one of the best players again in the country. Different, I don't mean in the way we're going to talk about it. Different style, different position, different strengths on the court. And the LSU Tigers, who were, I guess, I think they were a 2-3 seed. Anyway, big heavyweight matchup there. And then leading up to that, of course, it blew up after the fact. Caitlyn Clark is seen doing, all these hand gestures, like waving her hand in front of her face. Most people have seen that by now. Like the, you can't see me because she's, so dominant. And just, I'll say, talking trash, like the young kids say, wanting all the smoke, and like looking at the audience who's been chanting overrated, and then she puts up 40 on them, like all this, like, in my opinion, completely valid stuff you do in sports. Loved it. Everyone loved it. I said this is gonna be a short summary. Fast forward, Angel Reese championship game, who eventually wins, seeks out Caitlyn Clark, does the same hand gesture in front of her, points to her hand, the ring finger, like they're going to get the championship ring. And that blew up as a disrespectful, mocking, over-the-top gesture by Angel Reese to Caitlyn Clark. I almost forgot Caitlyn Clark is also seen in the Final Four game against South Carolina, waving off somebody, daring them to shoot. Again, I thought was completely fine. So that kind of motivated what Angel Reese did a little bit. Okay, all this, hopefully everyone's tracking. Leith, you can clean it up. But all this happens. Overshadowed what was, I think, was a fantastic game and tournament in the women's tournament. Twitter, the internet went nuts over these antics. I don't think it was antics, but ended up being antics. What were your thoughts? I'm assuming you had thoughts before anything even happened, but like, what were your thoughts coming into watching that game? And then what transpired after all of that, or in the midst of all of that?
Yeah, I was excited for that championship. I had picked Iowa to be there. LSU, I'll say this is, people disagree on this because they're like, well, they won the title. That's fine. But objectively speaking, when you look at the way the bracket was set up, LSU had, I think, a bit of an easier run to the Final Four and to the championship, not negating their talent. And that's why I think for people who don't watch basketball, who don't pay attention to the tournament year after year, you might be like, Alethea, how could you say something like that? But if you've been paying attention throughout the year, you see the way the brackets are laid out. Typically the top seeds, so South Carolina, they've got the easiest walk to the tournament, the final, right? Every year, the overall number one seed, they get put in the easiest bracket. And then that's even sweeter when they get upset, right? So I did not have LSU in the final, but watching them play Elite Eight, I watched them all tournament, watching them play Elite Eight, and then in the Final Four, I was excited. You have two very different teams. You got predominantly white Iowa against predominantly black LSU. Two different coaches. Lisa Boulder at Iowa, been there for 23 years, has just won back-to-back Big Ten, titles regular season, won the Big Ten tournament. She's finally in her first national championship game. And you got this legend, Kim Mulkey, who in her second year with a team of, I think, 9 transfers, they're in the championship game. That's a story right there. Okay.
Crazy.
And so there was a lot of excitement of, I had been watching both teams throughout the season, two very different styles of play. And I was curious, how is this matchup going to go? I was going to have to play LSU differently than they played South Carolina because LSU is more talented on the perimeter than South Carolina is. The way Iowa defended South Carolina was a perfect game plan. Beat me from the outside because you're not a good 3-point shooting team. And it worked. That's what a game plan is called.
Right.
And LSU has shooters. They can shoot from the outside. So what do you do when you've got shooters and you have bigs, especially someone like Angel Reese, who can take you off the bounce and post you up? So I was excited for the matchup. How the game unfolded was wild, right? We never want the officiating in a game, especially a national championship game, to be a topic of conversation.
Oh my gosh. I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Oh my gosh.
All of the things we've been talking about, people forgot how poor the officiating was. People will say, well, there was a few less fouls in that game than the game before. It's not about how many fouls were called. It's the type of fouls that were called and who the fouls were called on. So you have a very different first half because of that. But then you have a cool story of the guard coming off the bench, dropping like 20 in the first half. I mean, she was banking in threes. I'm like, what is happening? And you have Caitlyn out of rhythm because she got in foul trouble. And so the way the game unfolded, there was all this hype, all this energy, all this excitement. And it did not unfold the way that I think a lot of us hoped it would in some ways because of the foul situation, because when you're in foul trouble, you play differently. And I was forced to play differently. Caitlyn was forced to play differently because of that. So anyways, you have this run, I was trying to chip away at that huge lead that LSU had. I think got it down to like 7, but could never get over the hump there. And how it ended. And I'll say this, there's some bias coming into me watching this game. One, I'm a Big Ten fan. I have been my whole life. I'm an Ohio State fan. So when the tournament comes around, both women's and men's, I am rooting for the Big Ten. It's great for the conference. So I wanted Iowa to win. Also, I'm not a Kim Mulkey fan. I haven't been for a long time. I respect LSU's coach. I respect what she has done from a basketball perspective, multiple titles at Baylor, comes to LSU second year in the national championship game. I respect that. There are things that I don't appreciate about her on and off the court. So let me just lay that down with why, with my perspective.
You care to elaborate?
I don't like her antics. People say she's passionate. Yeah. And I respect passion. I'm a passionate person. But when you are doing some of the things that she did in the national championship game and you don't get teed up, Kim Mulkey should have been teed up at least one time for her stomping on the court, coming at the officials, ripping her jacket off. It's part of her MO. That's her in general. But any other coach would get teed up for doing that. She didn't get one tee. I literally watched a clip where the ref pulled her back because she was in the ref's ear while the play was happening, yelling, and the ref just pulled her back and kept it pushing. She should have been teed up for that. So and again, this was prior to LSU. I didn't enjoy that at Baylor. Like, she didn't change anything getting to LSU, that she is who she is. And so I am just not a fan of it. And I have heard things about her care for players off the court, both at Baylor and I have friends who are in the SEC. So, there's just some of that, just from a character standpoint, that I personally am not a fan of. It doesn't negate.
I'm just going to fill in some gaps for people that might not be tracking. So Kim Mulkey, coached at Baylor. She won a couple championships. Is that correct?
Yep.
LSU has only been there 2 years, already won another one.
Yep.
And she's, listeners, if you didn't watch, or if you did watch the game, she's always wearing something extremely flashy. She's very demonstrative. Coach, which I didn't notice the things about, like, I don't remember watching and thinking, oh, she should be teed up. But like I said, not having watched much of the college women's game, that's interesting to know, because that informs a little bit about what I thought about her post game. But keep going.
Yeah, and she's interesting in that these are the little things that if people have been watching or paying attention, you don't even think about. But even how she was asked about some stuff in the post game, listen to the way that she answers. She doesn't actually give a clear answer. She's I'll give you summary, but I'm not going to say this about this player or this about the situation. And she's been like that in the past too. So anyways, I don't want to, that's not a major storyline, but for me watching the game, I'm aware of some of my bias, and I wanted Iowa to win. And so, I see the game's about to end. I'm like, yeah, LSU. I mean, Alexis Morris had a crazy fourth quarter, and just sealed the deal, which is what seniors do. And as a point guard, I respected it and loved it, right? You put the team on your back, you do what you got to do. So the game is ending, and I actually turned it off. I haven't told anybody this. I turned off the game before all the antics, before Angel did her, taunting to Caitlyn Clark. I saw it on Instagram after pretty quickly. I don't have Twitter anymore. Twitter is not a healthy place for me to be. So I deactivated my account, but I catch things on Instagram quite a bit. And I saw it, and I just kind of chuckled, because Caitlyn's been doing it all tournament, not just the Final Four. So Caitlyn plays like that. She did it during the Big Ten tournament. Like, that's just how she plays. She will hit big shots. She will talk trash. She'll do these little things. She'll amp up the crowd, and that's just what she does. Now, do people care for that? Some people don't. Some people say you don't need to do that. That's fine. Everyone has their own opinion about how one should carry themselves and whether you should talk trash or not, whether you should egg on the crowd or not. Okay, we can debate all day long about what's, quote, right or wrong. It's all about our definition of what right and wrong is, okay? So Caitlyn, in the Elite Eight game, a clip went viral. No one was talking about this. They're playing Louisville. Louisville's down 15 in the fourth quarter. The clip where they zoomed in on Caitlyn, she looks at Haley Van Lith. Haley Van Lith, point guard or guard at Louisville. She's in the transfer portal now. One of the best in the country. She trained with Kobe like a few years back. Like, she can hoop. Caitlyn Clark looks at her and says, "You're down by 15, shut up."
Right.
And they end up beating them. Right.
Yeah.
So Caitlyn's been talking trash. So if you play sports, and in particular, if you play basketball, if you talk trash, you've got to be prepared for it to come back at you. And it's going to come back at you 1,000 times harder than what you're putting out. Anybody knows that. Yep. I talk trash a little bit when I used to play. And I knew, man, I might be having a bad game, and that's going to come back on me. Okay, you got to be prepared for that. So Angel doing the, like, you can't see me, pointing at her ring finger, for me, I'm like, okay, do you need to keep doing it? No. But if that's what you feel that you need to do, whatever. I personally, okay, this is my personal opinion. I personally don't think it's necessary to keep doing it. And what actually bothered me, which no one I feel like has talked about, for me, it wasn't what happened at the end of the game. Like the game ends, she's doing all that. For me, what bothered me about what Angel was doing was all her antics after the game. Like people weren't talking about all the post-game stuff, right? Where she is on her live still like literally calling out Caitlyn and talking about, I do the disrespecting, you know, I don't get disrespected. So for me, I'm like, there is some immaturity for Angel. This is an unpopular opinion. Okay. But for me, come back to your question, David, at the end of the game, Angel doing that back to Caitlyn, I'm like, that's what happens in the sport. If you talk trash, it's going to come back at you. The extremeness in which you do it. For me, I'm like, you just won a national championship. Like, I would hope you would be more concerned about celebrating with your team than like tracking down a player and like continuing to wave your hand in her face. Do I think it was necessary? Absolutely not. Do I think she should have gotten the vitriol and the derogatory language into her? Absolutely not. You don't have to like it. You don't have to dehumanize her in the process.
Yeah. That was great. Do you feel like, so the racial element, do you feel like there is not, we'll get to double standard, but trying to think of how to ask this part. I agree. So like, I agree with the perspective of what you said with, like, I don't like when people make false comparisons. Like I do think what Angel Reese did was a little, your words, like lacked a little bit of maturity. And what she did, and then like in the same way she did the face thing and what Caitlyn Clark did, I don't think was completely the same. Like I actually don't think it's helpful when people say, look, one, like white girl did this, black girl did this, racist. Like I now everyone listens and everyone knows me, knows that I'm going to go there, but I'm not going to go there just to like go there. Like I do think they were different degrees, but that doesn't mean the criticism is fair or that it would have been the same had it been turned around. And I know people can be like, well, how do you know that? Yeah. I'm not going to try and plead my case right now, but I think it's just, you can look at athletes that we like to elevate and, you know, along racial lines, it's fact. Like certain players get passes a lot of times along racial lines. White players are elevated for having, and Caitlyn Clark, an example, elevated for having that mentality. So that's the point that I was trying to point out to anybody that was wanting to talk about it, of like, well, yeah, like what Angel Reese did, she went, made sure she got in her face, did it several times. You said did even more stuff post game. You know, lacked a little bit of maturity, but do I think like they were both equal? No, but the criticism, like you said, I think was obviously completely unfair. They're kids. These are kids, and the stuff that I saw being said about her is just, you know, horrific, like terrible. Like we're talking about kids, which I think people forget once they're on TV playing in front of, you know, a national stage, which could be problematic as well. But I think that there's like do you, from your perspective as a, you know, college athlete, a black woman, black player, do you see, like, do you empathize with the other perspective of Angel Reese's whole thing is like just wanting to be free to do whatever she wants and be free to be completely herself. And I know we just talked about lacking maturity potentially in some ways, but I felt like she didn't, and the entire LSU team don't have the luxury of people understanding their story. And what I mean is, like, I feel like Angel Reese had been fighting that stereotype and being called, you know, all these different things, too hood. You know, the whole team like had that I think, perspective of like, just these loud Black women that like to play a certain showy, flashy way. Oh, case in point, look what Angel Reese is doing. And she was even had ties to the girl that was left wide open on South Carolina. You know, Angel Reese, I think that was some of her motivation for going after Caitlyn Clark. All that, you know, basketball nerd stuff that like only someone like me, you would have picked up on. It's fine. I don't expect everyone to know that. But the unfortunate part is like, people are just going to see what she did and then not understand any context. So to me, when then I see Angel Reese saying, F it, I don't really care what anyone thinks because it's not going to matter because they're always going to label me as this. I'm going to do whatever I want. Hence the IG live and all that kind of stuff. Sure, could there be some immaturity? Yeah. But also, it's hard not to also lean for me on that side of like, you know, like what, I can't blame her in a lot of regard. And then also say like, this is why these ignorant perspectives are bad for everybody, because then we're needlessly villainizing Caitlyn Clark when she did nothing wrong either. Like, I don't like she's getting compared like, oh, she gets the benefit of the doubt. It's like she didn't do anything. Like, we actually loved what she did, but we have to talk about it in order to defend an Angel Reese. Like, I had no problem with anything Caitlyn Clark did. Still don't. I had nothing. And then I think she answered everything post game and like interviews like well as well. She's like, no, there's no like. She was extremely classy because one thing she said when she was like, I couldn't really see her. I was just trying to get back to my teammates. One, I was like, absolutely not. Like, very classy for you to leave it on the court. But I'm like 1,000% you saw her. Like, she made sure you saw her. But I thought that was hilarious. She's like, I couldn't even see her. I was like, no chance. My perspective leading into the game and like in the middle of it though, even before the antics happened though, I could sense the tension rising with everyone wanting Caitlyn Clark to win. And then like the casual viewer like me who's new to it, and I could just see it coming before me. And I was watching it. My wife actually watched with me as well. When she did that, I think, Caitlyn was just like, how do you think people are going to like react to that? I'm like, 1,000%. Like, I'm like, Twitter is gonna break the internet over this, and it sucks. And, you know, unfortunately, that's what happened. But yes, I rambled a little bit on that. Do you think, so like I'm reaching back a long time ago. We did something on double standards with female athletes and male athletes even. I think that it'd be worth going there a little bit here. Do you think like overall, so like women's game, the men's game, that there is, with this conversation we're having, a double standard in how we view female athletes and how they are able to express themselves?
1,000% yes.
Okay.
I was so frustrated hours after the game the next day, what the conversation is about. Obviously, there are things that had to be addressed because of the racial dynamics that were at play and the gender dynamics. That's where, especially in sport, race and gender are inextricably intertwined. You can't just say we're just talking about basketball, because we're hardly ever just talking about basketball. Okay. And so I was like, that I said that, I even shared on Instagram. I said, you guys, we're spending so much time talking about someone throwing back in the face of a player who did her little hand in front of her face. That's the topic of conversation. I don't ever hear that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've been watching basketball for a long time. We're sticking to basketball. I've been watching basketball for a long time. I can't recall a time in the men's game where a player was trash talking someone else, or Allen Iverson stepping over Tyronn Lue when he was on the ground to hit a shot in his face, or a player crossing someone over, or dunking on someone and staring them down, and people being like, oh my gosh, that was so disrespectful. He's a terrible person. I can't believe that. Like, dropping all these cuss words on Twitter about their character and I don't recall any of that. But that's what happened to Angel for doing something that Caitlyn's been doing all tournament, right? Again, you don't have to agree with the degree to which she did it, we can say like, yeah, I don't think it was necessary to continue it on the way that she did. But for that to become the topic of conversation, you don't see that with the men's game. For the men, it's part of the game. Like you talk trash, you're like, yeah, you did something. So yeah, it's part of it. Like, yeah, I dumped on you. I'll stare you down. They got a tee. Oh, no problem. That's fine. Whatever. The refs are tripping. Like they got a technical, no big deal. Keep it pushing. That's just part of the game. It makes me think of, if you've ever watched Love and Basketball, it's my favorite movie, partly because when it came out, I was compared to Monica. I was in middle school, I was in 8th grade. And I even, for a long time, had a birthmark on my face on the same side that she had the scar on her face, if you've seen the movie. And so anyways, but in the movie early on, Monica's playing, she blocks this shot and stares down the girl, ref tees her up. She gets taken out of the game. And then she gets home and her parents are, her mom's like ragging on her. And she goes off and essentially saying like, if the dudes do that, it's fine. Like they're just ball players, but I'm told to act like a lady. I'm not supposed to do that. I'm a ball player. It's part of the game. And so I've even thought of that clip, because it's so true and it's been like that for so long. And so the short end of the answer is yes, there are massive discrepancies. There's such a double standard. In this case, we'll talk about basketball between the men's and women's game. And you saw that play out in what happened between LSU and Iowa, even to the point of literally the topics of headlines would be Caitlyn Clark versus Angel Reese.
Right.
Now it became even, you didn't see that. You didn't see that with any player being like this player versus this player because they did something. So now the topic, you now are pitting these two players against each other for this conversation that y'all have made an issue. And people don't see the problem with that. And so there's a massive double standard there. And again, we get into the racial dynamics that are at play. We get into the gender dynamics that are at play, and the way that, in this case, how Black women in society are treated differently. And then you throw it into the context of the sport, and there's history for that. So I'm going to go back to, this was in 2007. Rutgers women's basketball had a squad in the early 2000s. They had a squad. Epiphany Prince. I'm blanking on one of the players right now. I can see her face. They had they had a squad, and they were tough in the Big East. Okay. Vivian Stringer, coach, they had a squad, physical. These girls could hoop. Don Imus, he was a popular radio host at the time.
I was thinking about this. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is historic, right? It's like, you can't talk about this current conversation without the reference points. And so this has been a case for Black women in basketball being talked about by the way they carry themselves, by their style of play, by the way they dress. That you don't ever hear white players being talked about in that way. So Don Imus on his radio show makes a reference to the Rutgers women's basketball team. He talked about their appearance, their tattoos, and he called them nappy-headed hoes. Okay? Mm-hmm. So that type of tenor and tone was some of the same stuff being played out on social media about Angel Reese and about LSU basketball.
Yeah.
So it's not just like you just don't like them, or it's not that easy. It's not that isolated. It's not that this was just this instance. This is historic. And so you have that also factoring into the double standard that was at play with the way that the men's game is talked about, the way the men's game is viewed, and the way the women's game is talked about, the way the women's game is viewed. That's happening all at the same time. And it's so frustrating that that's been the conversation now, and not so much of the goodness of what we saw play out in the tournament. And by two phenomenal players who should be highlighted. The thing shouldn't be Angel Reese versus Caitlyn Clark. What it should have been was LSU just won our first title in women's basketball history. Second year, head coach, 9 transfers. Angel Reese broke the NCAA record for double-doubles, 34 double-doubles in a season. You know how hard that is to do? To have that many double-doubles? Yeah. When you played 36 games, 34 of them, you had a double-double.
Nuts.
Okay? So no one's talking about that. No one's talking about almost 10 million people viewing the national championship game, which has the highest ratings. No one's talking about that. Not talking about Caitlyn Clark set a record for most threes in the final game. And she didn't have one of her best games, and she still dropped the 30-piece. She had back-to-back 40-point games in the tournament. Yeah. She scored the most points in the NCAA tournament in history, men's and women's. No one's talking about that. Like, that's the stuff you should be highlighting. Caitlyn Clark and Angel Reese, let's talk about those things. You can address character, you can address maturity, you can address whether or not someone should be trash talking or not. Okay, that's a preference more than anything for the most part, right? Again, I think there's varying degrees of immaturity, but again, they're also 20 years old, 21 years old.
Yeah.
How many of us are, let's all go back to when we were 20, 21 years old, 22. Were we not immature? We were, and we didn't have a national spotlight on us. We weren't the top NIL athlete in the whole country. Angel Reese is.
Yeah.
We didn't have any of those things, and we were still immature as crap, right? Like, so they're to your point, like they're kids. Like, we're not even creating space for us to be able to have some of the nuance of the conversation. And so, anyways, that's a long answer to your question. But all of that is, to me, when you talk about the double standard, it's so layered. It's not simply, the women are treated differently than men. Here's why. And then you just go down the line.
I think about the one of the biggest narratives, like with the men's game, like NBA. I mean, what do we hear nowadays all the time? Like, we're too, like, the NBA is too soft, like the game's too soft. Like, let's let them talk trash, or like, let's take us back to the days of like the Bad Boys where you could clothesline people and stuff like that.
Yep.
It's like we want that. We're like, oh, the guys are too soft. Like, they can't handle anything. They would have gotten, punked back in the day.
Yep.
But then the women's game has their moment, like a few games in front of like the big stage, and we're like, oh, like you said, a little too much. I can't. Too much trash talking. Need to be more ladylike. That feels icky to even say, but that's what the backdrop is of, like, a little too demonstrative or expressive for viewers. So that's the first double standard that comes to my mind. I'm like, oh, I thought we wanted there to be heat and smoke. Like, I thought we wanted this hard type of play, but just from the men, or what's going on here. So
precisely, I literally said that
wholeheartedly agree.
Instagram rant. I was like, the men will throw hands and y'all won't say nothing.
Yeah,
they'll be like, oh, they got suspended. Dang, that's tough. Okay, I guess you should get suspended for throwing a punch. But all right, next topic of conversation. Like, that's the way it's treated. But too much trash talking. Come on,
absolutely. Yeah.
Come on.
All right, last thing on this. Did you have an issue with First Lady inviting? I can't even say it. Inviting both teams to the White House. So for those of you listening, typically, I guess all the major sports, including college, the championship winners typically get invited to go meet the president and go to the White House. That obviously would be LSU's right. Just innate invitation for being the champions. But First Lady Dr. Jill Biden was at the game. People knew that. They showed her several times. In the aftermath of all of these antics we're discussing, said, everyone played a good game. Let's just invite both teams. So what was your reaction to that, Leith?
I said, are you kidding me? That was my initial reaction. Like, it's already hot, right? The conversation, all these other things. And like, now you've just thrown gas on the fire. Like, right. Ma'am, are you serious? Now, I was talking to someone about this recently, one of my friends, and he said, can we hold space let's remove ourselves from all the intensity of the conversation. Let's just hear what Joe Biden said, right? Like, there can be some appreciation for her admiration for the teams and their play and how exciting the tournament was, right? And that's her juice for saying, let's invite both of them. You want to honor and recognize two incredible teams. Okay, now let's put you back into history, narratives, all the things. You can't say that. You can't do that, because at no point. Now, I'm sure there's probably times where former presidents or former first ladies were probably like, behind closed doors, like, oh, that would be cool if both were here. Like, that was an incredible game. We should honor both. I don't think that's the first time someone in the White House has said that. I could be wrong, but that's my assumption. No one's ever publicly said it. So it's a miss in Joe Biden's understanding of all the narratives that are at play to just make this really kind gesture of like, the game was so exciting. And when she said like, I was around when Title IX was enacted and like, look how far the women's game has come. I appreciate all of that. There's so many reasons why you can't say we should invite both teams. And what she did in making a statement like that, because of what was already happening, was you added so much fuel to the fire around the racial disparities and narratives that was at play. And I'm sorry, this is just me. If you lost, you don't get an invite to the White House.
Yeah.
If you want to honor the team, Jill, head over to Iowa, go to University of Iowa, kick it with them. And that's cool. You don't invite them to the White House. The champions get invited to the White House. That is historic. You can look it up across the board. If you won a national championship or whatever sport you're in, title, you go to the White House if you want to. You get the invite and you say yes or no. And so I had so many issues with her saying that. And then now the White House is having to backtrack. And it's like, you can't really take that back because you clearly did not understand the context with which you were saying it. So I hope that Joe Biden has learned from, this was a kind gesture. Like, again, my heart was in the right place. My intention was good. Again, we can get into intention versus impact.
Which we love hearing that.
Yeah. The impact of you saying that was so problematic and carried so much weight. And so also, why are you the people who lost don't get invited to the White House? I think aside from all the other things at play, I was like, since when did we do that? Like, it takes away from the champions' experience of getting invited to the White House to be honored for this incredible season you had, to the point where you've won your sport's highest honor in college, right? In this case, like, it takes whoever is invited, it takes away from the fact that like the champions are honored in this way.
It just bled so much ignorance. And like you said, it was a kind gesture, but that's why it's a lose-lose when stuff like that's done. It was like the same thing when there is a racial incident and someone who doesn't understand what is going on, but has authority and power, has the freedom to be able to be like, guys, let's just get along. It's just a similar sentiment. So many things we've talked about on here in the past of, well, even, this might be dramatic, but like, even when Bible verses are taken out of context, well, the gospel's for everybody. So let's just get along. It's like, well, that's the sidestepping the point here. That's why it's so problematic when like, a pastor says that or something, when something real is going on. But yeah, it bled, it reeked of just ignorance. And I was just like, oh gosh, like I wasn't concerned in a way of like, I mean, of course, LSU was like, they were never going to go if that was going to happen. And then Caitlyn Clark with a lot of class was like, we're not going either. Like that is for LSU. They won. But I also chuckle now because I'm like, the level of ignorance is so big. So I'm like, that couldn't have happened. Like that would have looked so unbelievably awkward. Like,
and Joe Biden has history.
Teams show up like, oh my gosh.
That's the thing. And she's been in the White House, right? Like Biden was the vice president to Obama.
Yeah, true.
And so, sis, you've been around. And what in those 8 years, what runner-up was invited? Come on.
So many teams. Yeah.
Come on.
Imagine LeBron and standing with the Warriors.
Right? That was a great game.
2017.
We're going to invite the Warriors and the Warriors and the Cavs. Like, huh?
Yeah, wait, what? Yeah.
No. Yeah. It was so problematic.
Yeah, that was unfortunate and a little bit funny if I'm being all the way honest. All right. Speaking of, again, NBA, let's switch gears a little bit to the men's game. We are in the beginning stages of, that was a weird way to put it. Playoffs have kicked off. It's round one. Leith here in LA. I'm jealous, but I guess they're playing in Memphis tonight, which is a little closer to where I'm at. But anyway, my Lakers are playing. LeBron's playing. 38 years young. I don't care what anyone says. Still the face of the league. Still his right now. I still gotta say top 5 in the league still right now. I'm that's where I stand on that. Anyway, there's a lot of narratives that I think, and we're not going to exhaust hardly any of them. But I want to ask you about this. I've never asked you this, I don't think, on a podcast. But I think there are similar things what we're already discussing here about the men's and women's game that I'd love to hear your take on as a Ohio person, a LeBron person, and a basketball person. There are similar inconsistent narratives, I think. So I'm gonna give a hot take, and people that know me, who are both basketball fans and then also just know what I'm about in the justice space. I've upset a lot of people by saying this, but I got to just be honest. I'm one of the, I'd say, rare fans of the game, and in the Christian community especially, who roots wholeheartedly against the Warriors and Steph Curry. I cannot. And my guy from high school played with them. I can't do it. Yes, I'm a Lakers fan, so that's obvious. But basketball, I've been a fan for so long, it means too much to me. I'm the least fun person probably to watch basketball with, because I have a lot of trouble watching basketball with people who I know are going to say either one, insensitive things, but also just things that are just you like this because of nothing has to do with basketball. You are hearing that people are saying that Steph Curry is a family man, or he plays the game, quote unquote, the right way, or I don't know, all these different things that are just triggering for me, because I'm you don't even watch. You don't even watch. You hear. Yeah. So anyway, it's one of those kind of with the Caitlyn Clark situation. I'm I got nothing bad to say about Steph in general. Amazing dude. I literally know some people that know him and know what an amazing guy is. So I got nothing bad to say about him. But this is, I think, been a little less prevalent, but in the heart of the Warriors, Cavs, LeBron, Steph battles, I guess dating back to 2015 through whatever 2020 is, it felt like 10 years. I could not unsee how specifically those two players who have gone back and forth with the league, with being the faces of the league, I feel like over the last 5 to 10 years, were portrayed differently and how they conducted themselves. I could not just unsee people's loose takes on things like arrogance, playing quote unquote the right way, philanthropy, attitude, what they're about, being family men, I don't know, married, faithful husband, stuff like that. And I really, maybe this is, we're throwing on maturity. Maybe it's a lack of maturity in me. I don't know, but I could not unsee it. It, quite frankly, would piss me off when I'd just want to watch a basketball game, and all they do is zoom in on the Curry family, and they just consistently talk about what an amazing nuclear family they are, and all this stuff. And I'm that's great. Can I see the game? Or can we also talk about, now they do because it's for different reasons, but okay, can we go ahead and talk about LeBron and his family? He's a family guy, but no one talks about that, and that's fine. That's neither here nor there. But all this elevation of a player like Steph for all these reasons that just were why is this happening? I think I can fill in the gaps of why this is happening. Of course, now we only talk about LeBron and his family because of, his kids and where they're headed and whatnot. All right. All that to say, do you agree that there is within even just the NBA and the men's game, inconsistencies? I've touched on, I said touched on, colorism and even some of the same themes that we've discussed with the women's game. Do you see that in the NBA currently, literally currently as we're sitting in the middle of the playoffs right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I see it to the degree that you might see it, but I definitely see, and I think there are varying reasons for it. Obviously, if we're talking about, in this case, about LeBron and Steph, I think part of what is fueled by that is people just don't like LeBron, and they haven't. A lot of people had their moment of not liking LeBron when he did the decision. When he did the decision. That was, in my opinion, that was a turning point for a number of people who are like, screw LeBron and everything he's about. I don't even like him anymore because why do you need to do that? Blah, blah, blah. Again, we can have our differences about, I was like, LeBron, this isn't necessary. You're raising money. You're raising money for Boys and Girls Club. I respect that. You can do that without doing a whole television broadcast about where you're going to play next season. You have a lot of money. Just send it. Like,
that objectively was not good.
It wasn't. But that was, for me, that was a moment of people saying, I don't like LeBron. And so that has followed him in all the stuff that they've done. So for people, when he came back to Cleveland and then he wins a championship, people aren't able to see how amazing that was because they just are like, I don't like LeBron. And so then it's like, who can I pit against him? Okay, I can pit the Warriors against him. I can pit Steph against him because Steph hasn't left the team. Steph carries himself a different way. He doesn't do all these other things. Now, here's what's interesting to me about the conversation over the last, let's say, 5 years about LeBron and Steph. Steph be talking trash. Steph
Thank you.
Be doing stuff.
Thank you.
And no one says it. I've had moments, now I'm used to it, but I feel like early on I was like, oh, that's different from Steph. Like, oh, okay. I didn't. Okay. He's throwing his mouthpiece. He's been teed up multiple times. Ejected.
Can you imagine what would happen to LeBron if he threw a mouthpiece and hit a fan?
Yeah.
He would be like, they would, we talking about Angel Reese. I mean, people would be calling for him to be suspended for 20 games.
Yep.
They'd be like, the fans, in the ER trying to get looked at. And I mean, it would be insane. And like, Steph's done that like 3 times. Again, I'm not saying like suspend Steph. I'm just saying like, come on. And like, I've heard so many people talk about the arrogance of LeBron with whatever his celebrations, his back-breaking thing and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, is Steph not known for like his shimmy and like the turnaround 3, like all this stuff? I'm like, which is fantastic. Like, I love it. It's so cold-blooded to do that. But I'm like, what am I missing here? Like, what is, how is somebody arrogant and someone is, again, like, I want to play at that guy. Like, he's a good guy or whatnot. Yeah. Anyway.
And I think, again, at the end of the day, it's people's personal opinions, and that fuels the conversation. So the chatter on Twitter and on other social media, and then you get all the, ESPN shows First Take, all the things, and everyone's putting their opinion into the narrative. And so, for me, I think what underlies it is people just don't like LeBron. And so they will nitpick any and everything that he does. And because LeBron's in the conversation with the GOAT conversation, Steph is not in that conversation. So because of that, the intensity of what comes at LeBron, the scrutiny that he takes is heightened because you have people that hate that LeBron is in the conversation around the greatest of all time. People hate that. People are like, why are we even talking about it? It's Jordan. I don't want to talk about it. So you have all of that factoring in. Steph is not a part of that. Steph has his own things that he's done, right? Like the threes record, multiple championships, all these things, right? So all of that, that feels better for people. Here's what has bothered me, and to some extent, about the conversation around LeBron is you don't have to like him. You don't have to like the decision. You don't have to like that he went to Miami, that he came back to Cleveland, that he went to LA. You don't have to like it. Okay, whatever. Let's look at some of the other things, though. The man broke the scoring record that everyone thought was untouchable, and he's still got a few years in the tank. So, but y'all feel some type of way about that. What LeBron has done off the floor, I'm like, this man does not get enough coverage around what he has done in Akron with the I Promise School. It does not get enough attention. It is wild to me. When you want to talk about stories, I mean, this kid, 18 years old, coming out of high school, deemed the chosen one, signs a $90 million shoe deal with Nike before he's ever played an NBA game, raised by a single mother, like the story is for a lot of people, it's like so incredible. It's so remarkable. It's so he's overcome so much. That just gets thrown to the wayside now because you don't like that he did a show to say where he was going to go, or you don't like that he's bounced around from team to team. Again, you don't have to like it. Like, okay, I get it. LeBron going to Miami changed the face of like the superstar team, right? Okay. There's even conversation around that. Like, was it really LeBron? I don't know, Boston, but okay. So anyways, I think again, it's
tell me
people's opinions around what they like and don't like, quote what's right or wrong. And so LeBron is going to take more intense scrutiny because of that, which I don't think is fair to him. And you can hear some of my people will say I'm biased. I am a LeBron fan. I've been a LeBron fan since he was in high school. He's 2 years older than me. So I grew up just south of Columbus. LeBron's just outside of Cleveland. I went to where I played when I went to undergrad, where I played basketball, is 30 minutes from Akron. So I am well aware. So I've been a LeBron fan from jump. I actually have the book they wrote about him, the LeBron James story, I think is the title. I've had that since I think I was a senior in high school or something. So I'm a fan of him with saying like, I don't like that he did the stupid decision, or
you don't like it for the proper reason. Like that was like,
or people
you're
don't
Ohio. That's deeply personal for you.
Yeah. Or people don't like that, he will say that he feels like he's the GOAT. Here's what's interesting about that. Again, you don't have to like it. How many times there's a conversation where players ask something and they say, I'm the best player. Am I going to sit here and say like so-and-so's better than me? That's a trend. Like that's not just the LeBron and the GOAT conversation. So I feel like all of those things get thrown on the wayside because people don't like LeBron at the end of the day. He did a Space Jam 2. I can't believe that LeBron would do a Space Jam 2. That's Michael Jordan's thing. Like you have all these little things that people just don't like. And then they throw that into the conversation. And then the narratives now become wildly different when they shouldn't be. But that's also the case in sports. I think when I think about the way conversations happen, the way the media portrays certain things, you see some of these unnecessary tangents that people go on that really distract from what should we actually be talking about? What should we actually be admiring? What should we actually be highlighting? Just because y'all don't like this man, okay. You don't have to agree with some of those things.
So much. I mean, you said like 30 different things that I've had extensive text and in-person conversations with friends who are probably like, David, will you ever stop? And people that know me, the answer is no. But so one thing that I'll say on here is, so I'll leave like the 29 other things, but is like the man, what are your thoughts on loyalty? Because I feel like I'm just going to paint with a broad brush for a second. I think people don't like LeBron. Yes, sure. The decision. I hated the decision as much as anybody too. But I think that he completely redeemed himself by going back to Cleveland. And I ask you about loyalty. Because what do you think? Like, I think loyalty in the NBA and professional sports is a stupid thing to talk about a lot of times, because no one people that stay there. There's an element of loyalty. I do think that's possible. But the people that stay the whole time in one place doesn't mean they're loyal. It means things worked out, or they just have different priorities. That's not like Bradley Beal staying in DC for over $200 million contract. Like that's 200 million reasons to stay. Like, and he can say what he wants. You're always going to think at that level you can win, but like, they're not going to win. They're never going to win. And he's fine. Like, that's him saying, I'd rather have stability maybe for my family, and I'm going to stay in DC. That's not loyalty. Like, it's rich billionaires paying him. There's nothing that's tying him. Like, come on. And then like, Steph staying in Golden State. Like, I don't think he doesn't want to do that. That's fine. Like, he's built a culture there. He does want to stay there, but you don't think that if something went sideways financially, or like he didn't see eye to eye with an owner or something, like he wouldn't leave. Like, anything can and does happen. MJ was going to leave. Kobe, this is blasphemous coming from me. He tried to leave multiple times. He was going to leave, but things worked out and he didn't have to, but he was going to leave. They traded Shaq. Yeah, you don't think he was gonna try? Like, they gave him like $30 million a year when he could barely play at the end of his career. Like, that is like so sad to say, but like it's just true. Like, that's loyalty on the franchise's part, maybe. But like, what I'm saying about LeBron is like, him going back to Cleveland, I think, is swept under the rug. Like, again, that's another like narrative that I've heard that's like selfish. Like, LeBron just wanted that to be all about him. I'm like, he left to go to that amazing situation in Miami. They easily could have won a couple more, like Shaq and Kobe. Like, easily could have won one more. People would have come there. It's Miami, to play with them. That would have been nuts. Like, top down. I don't think a lot of the fans, but like top down, great organization. Like with front office coach. I think Coach Spoelstra's a great coach. All that stuff. Yep. He goes back to Cleveland. Like that organization's horrible. Like Dan Gilbert, like the owner, he like made. I'm doing air quotes, like peace with him for a little bit. Like he's like, I owe it to this city. Like, I think he understood, like, I wronged them, but also owe it to the city. Like, I'm coming back. Let's do it. And he got him a championship essentially right away. And then 4 finals in a row for them to enjoy. Like that organization's terrible. Like, he put, in some ways, a lot of his career on the line by going back there, like to like one of the, I mean, I'm sorry to offend you as an Ohio person, but like a horrible franchise. Like at that point when he went there, like they're looking great now. So to me, I'm just like that kind of is loyalty to me of like, he felt so, I mean, loyal to literally his home in that area. Like, I'm going to go back there. Like, man, I don't know. Like if I want to leave all this, but to me, I'm just like, that was it. That redeemed it. Like if we always want to talk about championships and rings, like for like solve everything, that should have solved that in my opinion. Like the decision is water under the bridge. Yeah. Like, come on. That's where I stand with the loyalty thing. I'm like, all this loyalty chatter, like it's just I think it's
a great thing to name, because this conversation frustrates me about how people talk about loyalty in sports, and not just at the professional level, but at the collegiate level. Like now, even at the college level, everyone's like up in arms about the transfer portal. Like kids shouldn't be allowed to leave, but a coach can get bought out of their $12 million contract to go coach another school and not be penalized.
I think
it makes sense.
I think the NIL stuff has been done sloppily, but
no, that's for sure. That's a whole
fault. Like the players,
a whole nother conversation for sure. But to the loyalty point where you're like, a kid is going to transfer, they're not loyal, but no one ever says it about the coach that whose contract gets bought out and then they sign a $20 million deal to coach a college team for 6 years.
Yeah, the football coaches that leave before the championship game, like, why is that even a possibility?
But so when people bring up the loyalty conversation, I'm like, in what regards are you talking about loyalty? How are you defining that? That's what I think we need to get at. We do this exercise with the work that I do called Words and Their Meanings. I can't even believe I'm referencing this right now. My director would love this because we always give him a hard time. Every time we were doing it, he's trying to get this in. But how do you define loyalty? Because people are defining it differently, right? And that's what comes out, I think, even in the conversation at the pro level of, all the things that you listed. What makes someone loyal and what makes them not loyal? There are things that people don't factor in about how situations have worked out. Like, Steph has stayed. It's worked out for him. And they built an incredible culture. Why would you leave?
Right.
Y'all are running the table. You're making crazy amount of money. You're doing incredible work in Oakland too. Like, why would you leave? Right. And then there's opportunities. And what kills me is we penalize humans. They're more than just this. We penalize them for making decisions that will benefit them and their families. LeBron moving to LA was not about, I'm going to go win all these championships with the Lakers. That was I'm thinking about the longevity of my life and my family by moving to Los Angeles for all the things I'm going to do after I retire. He was setting himself up.
And it went along the lines. Right.
People just look at it from a basketball standpoint. Like, oh, now you're not loyal because you left and blah, blah, blah. But again, you don't talk about the ownership of organizations, and they're not loyal. If you can't win for them, or if they just don't like you, they will ship you out. How many people get screwed over and get traded because an owner doesn't like them or doesn't like how things are, or how coaches are just getting shipped left and right because they just didn't win when a coach has like put in their dues, that all gets thrown out the water when we talk about loyalty. It's only on the players. Again, you can have your feelings about players bouncing from teams and super teams being created for players to win championships. And should people be in certain conversations because they've joined this team and they won this ring? That's, you can have your opinion, and they can say, well, they didn't do it in the 90s. Jordan and them didn't do that, blah, 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 blah. First of all, they didn't have to. This is a different league we are talking about.
And they couldn't.
I mean, it wasn't even allowed to happen when Chris Paul tried to come to LA. The commissioner shut it down, y'all. No, people don't talk about that. People don't talk about, if that had gone through, that would have changed everything. And David Stern said, no. Okay, so there's all these other nuances.
One of the worst days of my life as a Lakers fan.
I'm sure people are still grieving that. So, anyways, I think the loyalty conversation is so necessary to have, because at the end of the day, people are defining that in the ways that they think someone makes someone loyal. And as fans, it's like you're biased too in what you feel someone being loyal is, because you've seen a player stick around and they just have stayed, but you don't even understand all the whys behind it. But now they're loyal just because you've seen something and you've deemed them loyal. Okay.
I just got to give LeBron a couple more shout outs, like the inconsistency. So like he's going to LA. There's already whispers about Space Jam 2. And then the immediate narrative is like, oh, he just cares about Hollywood. He wants to do a movie. I'm like,
yeah.
What about MJ, who did Space Jam 1 at his peak with the Bulls? Like that, does he just want to do movies too? You don't think he also would have done stuff like that? So like saying like his priority is not basketball because he did a movie. I'm like, everyone, all of the players who don't even deserve it have brands and they're doing all this stuff. Like this is ludicrous that people think he's not dedicated to the game. He's like, but then there's the other narrative, like, but he spends millions of dollars on his body and like is always working out. But because he doesn't, again, I'm a Kobe guy, but because he doesn't have that mentality, that FU mentality to everybody. It's like, oh, he's not as great. And I'm like, y'all, that's not that's not it. Like, that's not it. And then him going to LA, he's everyone before that's like, he's just a ring chaser. It's like when he went to LA, we were garbage.
Yeah.
Like, where's that narrative of like,
exactly.
Hey, like he's taking on like a new challenge, but no, it's like, LeBron's an idiot. He just cares about movies and he made a terrible basketball decision. Is what it is. I'm not going to say
it's a lose-lose.
Yeah. I'm not going to say he proved everything wrong because I'm not going to pretend like we didn't make trades and get AD, but I'm just saying like all these inconsistencies, even from basketball standpoint, inconsistencies of like two narratives about LeBron specifically being like, okay, one, he's too soft. He couldn't play back in the day with, hard fouling or then, but then the opposite narrative is, oh, he's not skilled. All he does is bowl through people. I'm like, well, which one is it?
Which is it? Exactly.
Which one is it? Because he's too strong or he's too weak?
Yep.
And obviously both of those is
it's just because people don't like him. That's what it is. At the end of the day, you have those conflicting narratives because people just don't like him. So they're going to find anything. This week, LeBron's soft. This week, LeBron just bullies people's over. This week, LeBron did something in the locker room after the game that I didn't like. And then this week he did like that. That's all it is people just don't like him. So, and LeBron doing what he's doing, breaking scoring records, doing stuff off the court, got his team in a position, doing what he needs to do to get back for the playoffs. So I just wish people could not get caught up in all of that and just be like, let's just look at like how freaking skilled this man is and what he's done. That just gets lost in all the bias and opinions and narratives and all the things. And so that's fine. LeBron's going to keep doing what LeBron's going to do. So,
couldn't agree more. I got to preach to myself. I people, myself included, need to not be so invested in this, but like, I need to do some work or something on myself because I can't unsee these things. I can't just enjoy the game. I got shout out to my guy Trav, who one of the students I mentor. He is Lakers fan. on the same level. Yeah, I say same level as me, but he's who I wish I was, because he is an eternal optimist and I'm an eternal pessimist. Like, he's just like, we got it. Like, we're going all the way. Like we'll have a good stretch. And I'm like, Trav, just wait, man. Like, it'll end. Like, this is why we're not gonna. That's not gonna. Like, I can't enjoy it. Like, I can't enjoy watching them because they just play. They play too much. Like, no lead. It's a cliche, but with the Lakers, no lead is safe. That game one of Memphis, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like, oh my, we're blowing them out in the last 2 minutes. What? Mm-hmm. Steals and dunks.
Yeah.
Like, when did we? I haven't seen
because the game before, you know, Schroeder hits his 3, and then AD fouls with 0.3 on the clock.
I was watching the game with Trav, the guy just said, and I was like, see. That's why I tell you, man. Like, you're trying to dab me up, like we got it, and it never happens. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like, this. I told you, man. That's why. And he's just like, yeah. And I mean, obviously we pulled it out and we won, but I'm like, oh my god,
it's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
All right, we gotta go. We're losing people because we could keep going. But Leith, thank you for joining me, West Coast. We have to play around with some time changes, it looks like, from here on out, but I appreciate you always making time to come on here. Shout out John Mark. We got to get him back for the next one. The roll down. Yeah. Everyone, I always talk about it, but like, y'all listen to the roll down. Y'all in the middle of season 2. It's as good as I said on the last time you were on here, but loving that. That's where this is where you come from. I'm going to say like a little bit of nonsense, but go to the roll down for some, like, I mean, some free therapy. Like, that stuff. Y'all are killing it. What you and Matthew are doing, and your guests has been great. So I appreciate what you guys are doing out there on the roll down. So the roll down podcast. Check out Leith and Matthew Melendrez. That's his last name, right? Yeah, Matthew Melendrez. I feel like I know him a little bit, at least because I listen. But love what you guys are doing out there. Thank you, as always, for making space to come on here, especially in the midst of just moving. Listeners, thank you for checking out this NBA basketball podcast. Appreciative of you guys. The music you're listening to is done by our friend Dylan Dent. Our artwork was done by Ashley Bush, and we'll see you guys next time.
The nightmare might scare you no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. Ahmaud Arbery. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go.